If there is one thing the internet agrees on, it's that you should never change anything ever. I hope you die. Sincerely, Velma.
I am conflicted in the conversation surrounding HBO's The Last of Us and the new Scooby-Doo spin-off Velma. Have you heard about Velma? No one's been talking about it. The conversation generally seems to go that The Last of Us so far is a really successful adaptation of the original game. That it's a very faithful and respectful recreation that really taps into the things that people already loved about it. Whereas Velma is a desecration of the beloved Scooby-Doo franchise. It spits in the face of the audience, it doesn't love you, and it never did. And if you know me, if you know the channel, you know that in general, when media tries to do something weird and unexpected with like an established property, I think that's cool and fun. And often I like that sort of thing. Whether or not I end up thinking it's successful, I just like to see art be experimented on and innovated on. At the end of the day, all art is iterative. There's no truly original story. Everything is borrowing bits and pieces, and you know, I just started watching Doom Patrol, and as a result, I now know what the Doom Patrol is. And I guess the X-Men is maybe just a rip-off of the Doom Patrol. There's nothing wrong with kind of taking an established thing and doing something weird and different with it. There's not really anything we can call a truly original story, and if we're talking about these properties specifically, I'm really not going to make that case. But I'm in a quandary, because HBO's The Last of Us, which is a very faithful one-to-one kind of adaptation for the most part, I'm really liking so far. While Velma is a strong departure from the Scooby-Doo franchise as it existed, and I despise it greatly. Now, this is not to say that HBO's The Last of Us has made no radical changes to the original material. There's no spores anymore. They got rid of the spores. Now everything's based on tendrils. The mushrooms get you through tendrils because apparently spores would be impossible to
honestly, if cordyceps did spread by spores, in reality, I think everybody would be infected within a few hours. It's just, we can't run away from air.
And I can't say enough, like, if I was to write a list of 50 different things that I thought were cool about The Last of Us and should be kept, the spores would be very nearly in that list. Maybe they just didn't want to have to put the characters in masks anytime they're in some kind of unfamiliar environment. Especially as the lead actor just did a show where he had to wear a mask the whole time. That might be an explanation that would make me not care about that anymore. And they race swapped one of the characters. And, you know, this upset me a lot because when I think of great white characters, I always think of Joel's dead daughter. Overall, though, it's very close. Like, there's certain shots that are literally perfect recreations of scenes from the game, which I don't think I've ever really seen done before when it comes to video game adaptations. There is a level of trust in the original material that I do think is kind of unheard of when it comes to like a cinematic recreation of a game thing. Now obviously there's kind of a reason for that. The original Last of Us was already kind of trying to be a prestige drama show. Now, a lot of people say that as a criticism and as a reason for why they dislike the first game. I'm someone who loved the first game. I've been on the Naughty Dog wagon since the Crash and the Jack days, and then I stopped being on the wagon for Uncharted. But now I'm back because of The Last of Us. But I also do feel like it was a game that was trying really hard to be a TV show. I just don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. What's cool about games is that it takes elements from all these other mediums and kind of remixes them while adding this interactive component to it. Cinematic elements are part of that. If you were to ask me for my favorite cinematic type game experience before The Last of Us, I guess I would have said Half-Life 2, or maybe BioShock. And I think those games are pretty great, and they did end up kind of leading to new invention within their genres that maybe did push things a little bit further. So yeah, The Last of Us game is very easy to turn into a TV show because most of the things that people loved about that game were the parts that were trying to be a TV show. What it leads to is something of a Disney on Ice effect.
No. You are not my hero.
Where you're kind of aware as you're running through this thing that you're really just kind of seeing an expanded sort of fan service of a thing that you have already experienced. More than anything, it's a kind of celebration. It's like a ritual thing. You're seeing the thing that you liked again, but now they're like emphasizing all the things that they know you like about it. Now, there's obviously something totally natural about that. Our whole attachment to art is often based on identifying with certain things and then feeling like positive feelings when you see that in other things. I think that's a fairly positive universal experience that people can have with art. Even if it doesn't necessarily lead to creativity within art, it can encourage you to really boil down art into this formula to get this one ideal thing, after which you kind of reject any other things that could be done with the art because you've pre-decided what a good thing is. Think about people's assumptions about Heath Ledger's Joker or Daniel Craig's James Bond. You can see things kind of going in a direction that you're skeptical of, but it's in the end necessary to kind of embrace that. Now, on the other hand, there's Velma.
What I want to know is where's the caveman?
This is my story, told my way.
Now, Velma, very clearly, doesn't care about Scooby-Doo.
I'm a big boy who could have removed those dumb girls' brains no problem if I wanted to.
I feel like there's something to the fact that they're literally not including the character of Scooby-Doo in this thing as a kind of like statement to that. Because now that it's out, we know that there's not really any reason a talking dog wouldn't fit in this thing. It's not really that grounded. It's still dealing with like crazy paranormal stuff. In a lot of ways, it's like more explicitly like weird paranormal reality than any other adaptation of Scooby-Doo.
Why, it's Dr. Grimsley, the head of the Weather Eye Project.
He's John, the gatekeeper. Hank!
Now, Velma is comedy, so I'm not gonna like poke holes in its plot. Like, there was this moment where there's this whole thing about if Fred is like a murderer, serial killer, but then there's also like a joke scene where he just slices someone's leg off, and then there's no consequence for it. And I was like, oh, so okay, so sometimes you're meant to care and sometimes you're not. I understand that on some level, if I just found Velma funny, I wouldn't really care about that. When it comes to comedy, certain inconsistencies can be like deliberate as a way to emphasize the thing that's funny. I'm not explaining the concept of humor in this video. Don't worry. But on a personal level, I think Velma is deeply unfunny.
You stoners watch Norval Snacks? This is exactly what happened to my vlog about Lil Wayne.
In Velma, it's like if you took like a weak parody of Scooby-Doo, and then you just like threw in things that you would have in an adult animated series. Swear words, murders, drugs, boobs. Please stop doing this with media set in high school. So it ends up like actually feeling juvenile. The one thing I don't want from an adult animated series is to feel like it's like, oh yeah, this cartoon's made for adults. The cartoons aren't for little babies anymore.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah, it's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
I think in the experience of watching Velma, what I realized was that while I fundamentally understood people's disliking of it, even as someone who isn't like that attached to Scooby-Doo, the extent of my Scooby-Doo is I watched a couple episodes, I played a couple of the games, and the What's New Scooby-Doo. I just disagreed with the wordings of the criticism, because I don't think this is really about being faithful or respectful. I don't think Velma or any of the characters need to be stuck within this established personality type or within this established tone or setting or anything else. Beyond just not enjoying it as a piece of media, I guess I think it's less about respecting the franchise and more about the fact that it's wearing the skin of that franchise to just be a different generic product. Like, this show easily could have been Riverdale animated series parody. Euphoria, animated series parody. It's a high school parody like you've seen many times before. If you wanted to watch like an adult animated Scooby-Doo parody, you could watch Mike Tyson Mysteries. Or for the high school thing, you could watch Clone High. Actually, you should watch Clone High. You should watch Clone High. I think there's a new season coming out soon. And I would also recommend The Venture Brothers, a show that also takes classic characters from Hanna-Barbera cartoons, among other things, and plays with them both as props for an entertaining show with a unique humor style, but also because the writers wanted to use those connections for the purposes of meaningful commentary, to have us reflect on the nostalgic archetypes of our youth and the hidden meaning therein. A show original enough that it still doesn't feel like it's merely piggybacking off of established characters or franchises, but written by people who had to fight for those inclusions because they genuinely wanted to say something about them. A show that even literally has a Scooby-Doo parody that confirms I would not care about a lot of my Velma criticisms if I thought the show was funny. A show that I have talked about for up to half an hour on this channel before, and would therefore obviously not forget to mention completely while filming this. Obviously. I would also suggest Harley Quinn, which Velma is most clearly influenced by, utilizing a similar comedic perspective on classic cartoon characters, but with far more confidence and originality, and which is a show I enjoy and have been wanting an excuse to talk about for a while. That is also an example of something Okay, just go watch the Nando recommendation video. And while I'm here, you know Mindy Kaling didn't write the show, right?
Hello, Velma. Do you like solving mysteries?
Yeah, but I'm actually much more three-dimensional than that.
And the characters don't feel like weird experimentations on what we understand the Scooby-Doo cast to be. It's exactly what you would think of as like your impulse SNL parody versions of the characters. What if Daphne was like a mean girl bitch? What if Fred was like a weird, insecure psychopath guy? What if Velma was like conceited and like cynical and stuff? But then they really innovated and they were like, well, what if Shaggy doesn't like drugs? It's not actually doing anything interesting. In fact, simply by trying to adapt elements from a different medium into a TV show format, The Last of Us is a more interesting thing than Velma is. Like, a franchise is a generally capitalist invention that sort of tries to disguise the fact that, again, media is kind of iterative. And it does so that, like, it can elevate certain stories for the purposes of profitability. If you're gonna just take Scooby-Doo so that you can make some other thing, make some other thing.
This is really spooky!
Yeah, this doesn't feel safe.
Like, if you just want to make something that has like the same style and the same humor with the same settings that we've already seen so many times before, why does that need to be a Scooby-Doo thing? The one advantage I think franchises have is that it actually allows people within this like big giant Hollywood system to occasionally make things that are like genuinely interesting by pegging it into a franchise. Maybe a little bit dystopian, but you know, you work with what you got. So when it comes to conversations about adaptations, what makes adaptations good and bad? The only thing that I really discourage is the perspective whereby we judge the quality of an adaptation on its faithfulness to the original thing. Art is always an interplay between the things that we want to hold on to and the things that we want to experiment with. A sort of static tradition and a dynamic experimentation. We pick things we want to give up, we pick things we want to take on, and in that way art gets to innovate. We should always discourage people from looking at art as some kind of ideal form that we just need to sculpt out, with any deviation being some wrong. But there are things that we like. There's many reasons to have attachment to Scooby-Doo as a children's franchise. People can end up with a lot of attachment and meaning to things that they experienced as kids. Very attached to The Last of Us, so I'm going to be biased towards things that try very hard to like maintain what made that thing great. And I think if there's one lesson that both The Last of Us and Scooby-Doo teaches us, it's that sometimes the way we think things are can be a red herring. That sometimes we can get stuck on a certain conclusion on how things are or how they should be, and that we should allow ourselves to gain a new perspective. And don't hate watch Velma. You shouldn't encourage things like that. I also wanted to include this here because I originally didn't think it would be an issue with my established audience. But I also know the video might go out to new people if the gods decree it. There is literally no reason to go out and harass random people involved in this series. They clearly genuinely wanted to make a fun show, or they wanted to get paid, and either way, there is no harm in that. Neither Scooby-Doo the franchise, nor Scooby-Doo the dog are gonna be killed by this. And whatever problems you have are symptoms of an industry far beyond the control of individual staff members of a cartoon show. Also, I think the art and animation are actually consistently very nice to look at. And this is probably my favorite design for Velma on any show. Thank you. Hey folks, thank you for watching the video. Thank you to the patrons scrolling by now. If you like the videos and you want to help support the channel, you can use the links down in the description. What did I want to say? Anything else? I don't actually have a lot to say in this credit section. I thought I did, but actually I kind of just need to run down the clock a bit here. So, how have you been doing? Let me know in the comments how you been doing. I want to hear from you. Thanks for watching, folks. I forgot to say the thing about the sponsor code, the raid sponsor codes. Thank you.